I'm going to start recording the lesson right now, and so that later on you'll be able to watch the recording. But I know the lesson just got uploaded to the Family School Online this morning, and I posted an announcement about that on Canvas. And again, if you're having problems getting on Canvas, accessing information, things like that, send me an email or message me, or yeah, like I know Michael Crenshaw is having some trouble, and some others are having some similar issues. So just go ahead. At the end of the class today, I'll give out my personal Gmail email, and then you can email me if you're not able to get on Canvas, message that way. Okay, so let's get started. So I know you had a different teacher last week. My name is Hannah Stoddard, and I will be teaching this class for the rest of the school year. And for those of you that were in history, sorry, this first 5-6 minutes might be a little bit of a repeat, but I want to introduce myself for those who weren't here yesterday at history. Okay, so this is just a little bit about myself, and I created a discussion thread on Canvas, and once those of you who are not on Canvas can log in, you'll be able to see it. But a discussion, I want you all to take an opportunity, if you like, to introduce yourself. Tell me your name, tell me some of your interests, some of your talents, and one thing that you've done in the last year that helped build the kingdom of God. It doesn't have to be huge, it could be big, it could be small, but just something. And so a little bit about myself. I am the eldest I have 10 brothers and sisters. So it's definitely a busy house at my home. Sorry, unless you're going to make a comment. Sorry, we're getting a little bit of ambiance. If you wouldn't mind, everybody, we're going to say this one more time. Go ahead and mute yourself unless you're going to make a comment, and then turn it on as soon as you are ready to make a comment. Okay, so I do on the side, other than working on obviously teaching this class and working for Latter-day Learning, my main role is I do video production, and so I do a lot of the post-production, I do a lot of the pre-production and the editing and the writing and the researching and the filming, which is a lot of fun. And several of the documentaries that I've assisted with, you can get them at Deseret Book, you can get them online. 2 on the Book of Mormon, which were 4-a-day covenant on the land and 4-a-day divinely sanctioned governments. And then another one about temple symbolism and the prophet Joseph Smith, and how you find symbolism all through Europe and Asia and among the early Christians, and especially with Joseph Smith in Nauvoo. So that was a very fun documentary work on statesmen and symbols. And then we just did one in April called The Prophet Joseph, More Than We Know, about Joseph Smith and prophecy. And then hopefully by Christmas, I'm working on another one with the Joseph Smith Foundation team on the 2 prophets in Revelation 11. And so with the Joseph Smith Foundation, I direct a lot of their projects, a lot of research, a lot of projects on doctrine and history and the history of the church. And then I also helped found a youth organization that gets together twice a month to kind of unite and network older teens and college-age LDS youth, and really help them connect and be able to work on projects to build Zion. Here's just a picture. That's my dad and I and my brother at a Book of Mormon conference. This was a couple years ago now, but I love studying providential history. I love studying health and music and singing. I especially love singing. That's probably one of my favorite things to do. Anything self-sufficiency, gardening, greenhouses, all of that. I do a lot of that with my family. Saying Hebrew, church history, the Reformation, family. Okay, it looks like some people are having some trouble hearing me. Here, let me turn off my webcam for a second. Does anyone have, I think the connection is a little slow. One second, let me fix something here. Okay, is that a little bit better? Okay. Okay, I just switched to a more secure connection, so hopefully that should help. Okay, so I was just mentioning, I love studying church history. I love studying the Reformation, and that's a lot what we'll be discussing in literature this year. Is we're going to be going into a lot of the period of the early colonization of America in Martin Luther, the different, I like to call them the forgotten founding fathers of America, because a lot of times we think of the founding fathers as George Washington. Okay, let's see. It sounds like there's still some trouble, so I'm going to disable my webcam and okay, try that. Okay. Okay, so starting here, now that I've disabled my webcam, let me know if you're still having trouble and see if it gets better. Okay. So other than working on that research, this is a picture of my family and I years ago doing Passover at our home. The top picture is my dad and I. This was, I think it was last October, presenting on Gog and Magog and different topics of prophecy and the Latter-day Prophets, what they've taught on the subject. But number one, my favorite thing to do is just anything if it's working with my family, whether it's an interest, especially of mine or not. And this is a very old picture for when my sister was born. He's now 7 or 8. But just working with my family, number one. So that's just a little bit about me. And I want to know a lot about you. I'm sad that we have to do this class online. I'm excited to do it online because I get to meet a lot of you that I wouldn't be able to meet since we don't live close by. But at the same time, I wish we were face-to-face in person so I could get to know y'all a little better. But since we don't have that luxury, go ahead and, if you wouldn't mind, tell me a little bit about yourself on Canvas so I can get to know you better. Okay, today we're going to be discussing Carry On Mr. Bowditch. We're going to be starting the book, and I hope some of you have gotten the chance to read the first 5 chapters. We're going to be discussing the first 5 chapters today, and then we'll be finishing the book in subsequent lessons. I'm glad you liked it, Anna. It was one of my favorite books when I read it as well. Kylie, you didn't have to read the whole thing by this lesson, but if you have, that's fantastic because you'll have a lot of insight you can add to the discussion. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's get started. I'm going to throw out some vocabulary words, and if I could get some of you to explain to me what you might think these words mean. If you've read the book, some of it is explained in the book, or it's also part of the lesson on the family school.
I know what an indentation is.
Okay, go ahead, Nathan.
It's a servant that goes and learns a trade, and then but doesn't pay for it. Then once they master the trade, then they begin teaching others a trade.
Right. So it's basically a situation where Connor Ramos, or sorry if I mispronounced your last name there, but if you're having trouble, okay, everyone, Connor is having some trouble being able to understand me. Is this a problem? Are more of you having the same issue? Okay. Connor, it might be a problem with, I think some of it might be connection speed. So, and I think that's the robot sound. Best describe it. So I'm sorry about that, but the recording will be better. So if there's a part of the lesson that you missed, you can go back and watch that part. But okay, so like Nathan was explaining, so an indentured service, it was a system where young people could be, they would make a contract with an individual, and that individual would promise to take care of them, to pay for their education, and then they would labor for them. So especially they did this a lot. Joseph Smith's ancestor actually came to America as an indentured servant. So Joseph Smith's ancestor, Robert Smith, he was in England, and he didn't have enough money to pay his passage to come over to America, but he wanted to come over to America, so what did he do? He agreed for man. He said, I'm going to work for you for such and such much time if you'll pay for my passage to come to America. So it was a situation where somebody who was poor, they would be able to get the opportunity to get something they didn't have money for by trading labor, essentially, for it. So okay, so one moment, I'm just going to make Connor a, okay, Jacob wants to take, do you want to take privateer? Is your mic working, Jacob Pipes?
Yeah, it is. I know that one description of a privateer is a pirate who raids for a local government.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a fancy document called a letter of marque that says he can basically go around and raid any foreign ships in their waters. Legal, so he won't get hanged. Not sure if it has the same thing in the book. We just barely got it in the mail the other day, so I haven't read it yet. But
right. So in history, for those during Queen Elizabeth's time, you had different men under her who they would go out and they would attack Spanish ships, and they could do that legally. So so it's just a private person, or it's a ship authorized under the government where they can go out and they can attack the foreign vessels. So the Carry On Mr. Bowditch, this book takes place during the years of the Revolutionary War and post-Revolutionary War. So during that time, you had American ships or privateers who would go out and they would attack the British ships, and they could do that legally. So nice job, Justin. Good job. Okay. Justin Mapes, do you want to do the ship Chandler?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ship Chandler, I think, is like where they get all their supplies for the ships.
Mm-hmm.
Like where they like buy everything and get all their materials that they need and tools and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. So they would go and they would get all their supplies, equipment, right? This is before Walmart and Costco and Amazon online, right? So this kind of a business was really important because they needed to be able, I mean, it was important from a social perspective, a political perspective, and for the ships to be able to really get up and running near the ports. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I think you nailed all those vocabulary terms. Just for the sake of time, we're going to skip the literary terms, but you can get on the Family School Online and you can read the lesson there. So let's talk about the real Nathaniel Bowditch. Now, this is it's fun. So the book, Carry On Mr. Bowditch, is a fictionalized story of a real person who really lived. Nathaniel Bowditch was a real individual. So he was born in Salem, Massachusetts, and an incredible child. Age 14, he starts studying algebra, and you're going to read about this later in the book, and for those who have read it, you know his is quite the story of a dedicated young man. But he starts studying algebra. He taught himself calculus. He taught himself French and Latin so that he could translate. He was reading Isaac Newton in the original languages. Quite the incredible young man. And as we're going to see, yes, so in the book, it refers to him as Nat. So that was short for Nathaniel, of course. And so Nat in the book, Nathaniel Bowditch, he was actually a real individual. And so he's born in Salem, Massachusetts. And I just wanted to pull this out so that you have a little historical context on the city of Salem, Massachusetts. The area of Salem actually is where some of Joseph Smith's ancestors also came from. Of course, it was settled by the Puritans. Connor Most just posted the scripture verse that I was just going into. So there's a section in our Doctrine and Covenants that talks about the Puritans that founded Salem, Massachusetts, which is pretty fun because a lot of times in scriptures you don't have too many cases where the Lord specifically isolates one group of people or specifically pulls out almost by name, okay, this person, this is what I think about, right, in history. But we really have an amazing section, D&C 111. Joseph Smith was in Salem, and to make a long story short, the Lord told Joseph Smith, he commanded Joseph Smith to, quote, inquire diligently concerning the more ancient inhabitants and founders of this city. So he told Joseph Smith, he said, I want you to study. Now think about Joseph Smith's priorities, especially during the time when this revelation was given. He was an incredibly busy person. He was overwhelmed with the restoration and all of the colonization and missionary work that was going on. But the Lord felt it was very important for Joseph Smith to study who were the founders of Salem, Massachusetts. What were their principles? What was their character? Who were they like? Why did they come here? And so we might ask ourselves the question, why was it so important that Joseph Smith study them? And as the Lord continues on, he says, for there are more treasures than one for you in this city. So he's saying, I want you to study these individuals, and you'll find out that they're a treasure. Maybe not a treasure like gold or silver, something you can purchase more material possessions with, but they are a treasure. And I worked on a project, part of one of those documentaries I mentioned earlier, that was on, and we explored this question with some other researchers. We explored the question, why would the Lord tell Joseph Smith to study the founders of Salem, Massachusetts? What was so amazing about them? And it's incredible. The founders of Salem, Massachusetts were men and women of great character. There were men and women who literally gave everything. They gave their livelihoods, they gave up their families, they gave up their possessions, they gave up their dreams, their hopes, everything to do what the Lord asked them to do, and they made covenants with the Lord. And they are some of the forgotten founding fathers of America. If there hadn't been the Puritans who founded Massachusetts, there wouldn't have been a George Washington, and there wouldn't have been a Joseph Smith. And so we'll be talking more about them later in history, if you're in history. But really take the time and think. In the world today, we hear a lot of varying opinions about the Puritans, and especially Puritans in Salem, Massachusetts. Always remember what the Lord said about them and think, okay, go back to the primary sources. Go back to the original history. And what you're going to find out is there is an amazing story of miracles and faith and sacrifice that really holds keys to all of the issues we struggle today. There are keys to being able to resolve those issues in studying the lives of the Puritans. Anyway, so that's Nathaniel Bowditch's background. He's born in Salem, and he's raised by the descendants of those who founded Salem at that time. So here we have, this is a quote from Nathaniel Bowditch's minister. He said, Nathaniel Bowditch's religion was rather an inward sentiment flowing out into the life and revealing itself in his character and actions. And I like that quote because, as we're going to see in the book, Nathaniel Bowditch was a man of amazing character and self-discipline, and that came from his faith, and that is the same for all of us. You can't have a lack of faith in God and at the same time be a great person. A great person will always have reliance upon God and obedience to God's law. Very good, Michael. So Michael shared the quote from John Winthrop's City on a Hill speech, and the whole story behind that is incredible, very, very prophetic and very important for all of us today. Okay. So, carry on, Mr. Bowditch. So let's go into chapter 1. So could somebody sum up for me what's happening in the story? What's going on?
Can I? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, in chapter 1, they are about to move to Salem, Massachusetts, and Nate, calling Nat in the story, is telling his brother Had about his good luck showing, and that at the full moon, he has to do at the full moon and shine his coin into the full moon. But then there turns out to be it's all cloudy and stormy, so he doesn't have to do his good luck charm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I don't know how much of, again, remember this is fictionalized version of Nathaniel Bowditch's life, but the story starts out that he and his family are moving back to Salem, and they've fallen on very hard times, and they've had a lot of struggles as a family. So Nat's heard this story that if you hold that the piece of silver, he's found a shilling, he has a piece of silver, and if he shakes it, and when there's a full moon, then they'll have good luck, of course. So so he's heard this story, and he's this young little boy, and he's going to try this for good luck, to bring good luck to his family. Go ahead, Griffin. You have a question? Yes. There is a quiz with this lesson. There's a quiz with each lesson in the family school. So, okay, so what are some of the values that you saw in chapter 1? I want to throw this out there. There's a couple things that the author really brings out to teach you a little bit about kind of the value system of this family. Does anyone remember a few of these? There's one the grandmother brings out when she is fixing breakfast for the children. Good. Liberty Gonzalez. Good. Right? She says you don't waste food. It isn't Christian to throw out good food, and I'm not going to carry that bowl of mush to Salem by hand. I personally like that part of the story. I thought it was funny because when I remember when I was about 5 or 6, having my parents say almost the same thing, word for word, and it really reminded me again of the historical context of the story. So these are the children, the grandchildren of the Puritans, and there was this really something that historians like to call the Puritan work ethic. And it was something that really pervaded, and it's really what gave us the America we have today. And of course, it was rooted in biblical principles, but it was really this idea of being good stewards over the earth, really being careful with what you have, being thrifty, not being wasteful or lazy or negligent. And so this is a little bit, you can see a little bit of that attitude coming out here. Okay, so Caleb, Con, good. Finding strength in and strengthening your siblings, right? That's something else I also enjoyed in this chapter and in the later chapters, right? You see a good family sibling relationship. Very good.
I noticed that in that part with the where his mother or grandmother, one of the two, asked him to go borrow some fire. Or to go find some fire, and he goes over to the neighbor's house and he knocks on, "Can I borrow some fire?" And they're just like, "Sure," and they just gave him some coals. I thought that was really interesting because nowadays if you went over to your neighbor's house and said, "Hey, can I borrow some fire? They'd look at you like you were crazy and say no and close the door. So this friendly neighbor, love thy neighbor kind of attitude was something I noticed in the chapter.
Very good. Very good. That reminds me of a chapter I was reading from President Joseph F. Smith in a book he wrote called Gospel Doctrine. And he was talking about how, as Latter-day Saints, we have a responsibility to be good neighbors. And it was funny because he said, I go down the street, and this is late 1800s when he's saying this. But I think it's the same thing. I see the same thing today. He said, I go down the street, and he said, people don't wave, and they don't smile, and they don't greet each other cheerfully. And he said, if we're the Latter-day Saints and we have a true good spirit, we should be smiling and greeting everyone. We love everyone as our brothers and sisters. And so I like that insight too. You see a good community relationship and good friendship going on here. How about on the last page before chapter 2? And Liza, the sister, she's worried. And Nat Bowditch, he says something that his father taught him about how his responsibility that ties into his sister. Anyone remember this part of it?
Are you talking about the part where his father said, he said that he heard his father say that boys are meant to take care of women?
Good, right. And I liked how this came to his mind with his sister, right? He had these worries and he had these concerns, but he said, nope, my dad's always taught me it's a boy's and a man's responsibility to take care of girls and women. And he really implemented that. So I pulled out two things from that. Is not only is he showing is that his father was teaching him these values, but he also is trying to implement those values and really be a true good big brother. Yeah, Michael Crenshaw, go ahead.
I just like to point out that that's the point of the priesthood as well, to show proper respect to women, girls, and children.
Very good. Very good, Michael. Very good. Any other comments from chapter 1 before we go to chapter 2? Good. Caleb, good. Okay. Move to chapter 2. Okay, so we already answered the question, what is a privateer? So what does Nat use his shilling for? To invest in good luck.
He buys an expectation from a sailor.
Okay, good. And now I can't see names of who makes comments. So whoever just made that excellent comment, would you mind explaining what an expectation is?
An expectation is where you would pay money to a sailor and then he would go out, and when he comes back he would give you part of what he earned on the journey.
Good. Yes, exactly. So it's a way it's a way of investment. And so what that does is he says, I'm going to use this shilling, I'm going to go and invest it, and hopefully get some money in return to take care of his family. Does anyone have anything else they liked specifically from chapter 2?
I like how the sailor was nice enough to give Nat an expectation, even though he had only a shilling. It says in there, tell no man that I gave you 10% for a shilling, or else I would never be bargained with again.
Right.
Oh, and this is Nathan.
Very good, Nathan. Very good. I like that as well. It kind of shows you an example of an older person showing respect and compassion and just true humanity for this young little boy. He didn't have anything in it for himself. From a logical point of view, it would be madness to go and trade a 10% of his expectation for a shilling. But he did it because he thought, number one, this was a boy who really cared about his family, was trying to do something to help his family. And so he really used that. And so it's a really good example of a man taking good care of those younger than himself. And then, of course, right, like Liberty said, Nat wanted to use this money to help his family. He wasn't thinking about me, right? What do I want to do? What do I want to buy? What do I feel like I want? What do I want to eat? What would be fun? He's thinking about, what does my family need? What can I do to contribute, even though he's only a little 6-year-old? And you also see good relationship between him and his sister, right? He comes home, you don't see this typical modern sibling relationship of jealousy and fighting against each other or using rudeness, right? It's a relationship between him and his sister of mutually trying to make their family better. They're interested in something bigger than themselves. Any other comments or thoughts? Okay. So chapter 3. So this is, okay, so, and I feel bad saying the names because I'm sure I'm pronouncing these incorrectly, but McKelty, Montlo, right, that's a huge part. He's a little boy, but the way he's brought up helps him make his decisions, right? He is a 6-year-old in his body, but really, when you look at his goals, the way he thinks, the way he acts, and the decisions he makes, you can tell that he's much more mature than a typical 6-year-old. Okay, so in chapter 3, he goes to school. And could somebody sum up what happens with his teacher? He runs into some complications when he starts school because he has the mathematical brain of a genius. Go ahead, Megan.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he goes to school and he gets put with the little kids because he's smaller and really young, but he has an amazing brain. He's really smart for his age. And so when he goes to do his math problems, he wants the more complicated ones, but his teacher does not show him any respect because he thinks he's little and stupid. So when he finally gets a bigger problem, the teacher doesn't believe him because the teacher doesn't think someone can be that smart at that age. And he proves the teacher wrong by showing him how he did the problem.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good, Megan. Right, and so, like Liberty said, he wants to learn. He has this desire to be challenged. He's a youth that's not interested in just getting by with what people expect of him. He's interested in doing the right thing and pushing himself. How did I also wanted to get some comments about Hab, his brother. How was his brother an example of how we should be with our own siblings?
I'm the oldest in my family, so I know a lot about when it comes down to it and somebody's being kind of just demeaning to your siblings and making them feel like they don't matter. It's your responsibility as an older sibling to stand up for them and say, hey, they're telling the truth. What they talk about is true.
Mm-hmm. Very good, right? There's that loyalty. So what could have done, right? Nat could have come to him and said, I'm having this problem. This is what's going on in school. And he could have gone, just stop complaining, or, oh, or even just, oh, that's too bad, but then forgetting about it, right? But instead he goes, well, or like Aubrey said, right, well, go tell mom, yeah, right? But instead he said he takes this as a personal responsibility. This is his brother, and he has a loyalty. He's going to stick up for his brother. And you all really see this through any great person, this attribute of loyalty, especially family loyalty. You always see this as a character trait among individuals of great character, true heroes and true heroines. A similar story would be Joseph Smith, after he had, if you remember, when he was really young and he had that operation on his leg. And later the Smith family moved to another location, and the man who was helping them move was really demeaning and really cruel to Joseph. And Alvin and Hiram, they stood up to the man, even getting getting beat up by the Suleiman, but they were willing to stand up, and they said, hey, that's my brother you're picking on, and I don't think so. And being willing to be that individual who is realizing, I'm put in a position as an older sibling, or maybe even a younger sibling, I'm going to go and I'm going to help him. Right. Caleb, very good. I think Caleb knows the story here. Right. So like McKelvin said, she said, I know sometimes we think our siblings can be annoying and everything, but when something or someone puts them in a bind, there's an instant loyalty and defensiveness that comes out for them. Right. And really, it's important to develop those true relationships, a true relationship with your siblings, because if you can't be a good sibling or a good brother or a good sister, you're going to have a hard time. That's really, it's in your home where you get your real character revealed to you. It's easier to be a good friend, to be nice at church, to be, have your social face, public face. But in your home is where it really exposes who are you really. And so if you can learn how to be a good brother and a good sister and make that a priority in your life, it will just make all the rest of your life fall into place and really help you with your future. Okay, so let's talk about chapter 4. So Hab says, boys don't blubber. What does he mean by that?
I think it means that he's trying to tell him that boys don't complain, that boys need to stick up for themselves and to not be whiners, that they're the men of the family and they need to learn to be strong.
Mm-hmm. Can anyone ever think of a hero in the scriptures that murmured, complained, and whined? Yeah, there's Laman and Lemuel, but I wouldn't think of him as the hero necessarily. Maybe he is to some people, but right. But you notice there were some of them like good. Caleb and Joshua, they're pulling out, right? Lehi or Jonah. But at that time, they were not the hero of the story. And for instance, in Lehi's case, after he humbles himself and he repents, the Lord gives him a stern chasing till he's literally shaking and trembling. So it's very important. When we look at history, different history of heroes, the time when they were not the hero was the time when they have those attributes, right? Of a whining, complaining, murmuring. And even, in this case, you might think, well, in this chapter, he was freezing cold. He had a right to. But he had that self-discipline, and Nat sees his brother having this character trait, and so he wants to become like that, and he does gain that character trait. of that self-discipline, of that sturdiness of character where he says, I'm gonna be strong. It doesn't matter if it hurts. It doesn't matter if I feel like I just want to cry. It doesn't matter if I feel like I want to whine. I'm not going to do it. Having that self-discipline. Okay, very good. Anything else from chapter 4? So in literature, they often, in any kind of book, the author will put in different conversation, different dialogue, different elements of style, different events that might seem in the entire course of the book like, oh, well, that's an insignificant event. But what they're doing through these different conversations is they're trying to paint a picture of who Nat is. Because it would be easy, right? We started out the class by talking about what Nathaniel Bowditch accomplished. Wow, he knew Latin, and he taught himself French, and he could translate, and he taught himself algebra and calculus, and he becomes this amazing mathematician and navigator. Wow, that's just amazing, right? But we didn't get the behind the scenes. What kind of a man was he that enabled him to become that? How was that just because, he was just lucky? He was lucky, and poor all the rest of us, we're just not that lucky, right? It wasn't like that. And so what they're trying to teach you in these opening chapters is to get a picture of who Nat is. He's 6 years old, and yet he's developing these character traits. He's young, and he runs into problems that are hard and to situations that are very difficult, but he doesn't falter. He keeps these standards, he keeps these principles, and he pushes through, and that's what enables him to become great. I wanted to share a quote. So obviously we're here talking about Nat's very young, right? He's more than just a self-disciplined person who teaches himself, right? He's a very young person who teaches himself. And this is a quote I love from President Joseph F. Smith. He said, he was speaking specifically to young men, but of course this applies to young women too. He says, among the strong helps to gain self-respect, right? Self-respect, self-esteem, confidence, those are all synonyms here. So he says, if you want to get self-respect, if you want to get the ability to be confident, he says, the strong helps of it are personal purity and proper thoughts. He said, I wish that all young men could appreciate the value there is in this practice and in giving their youthful days to the service of the Lord. He says, growth, development, progress, self-respect, the esteem and admiration of men naturally follow such a course in youth. And then he pulls in an example. He says, the Savior set a striking example in this matter and was early about his Father's business, right? He didn't say, one day I'll be an adult, one day I'll be grown up, and then I will do these amazing things. He didn't say that. He started from a very young age. In fact, Joseph Smith said, I found this fascinating when I first read this. Joseph Smith said that when Christ was 12 years old, he had enough knowledge and enough education to be able to rule the entire house of Israel by himself. So when he was 12 years old, he was mature enough that they could have made him the king, and he would have had no problem governing economically, politically, criminally, all the different aspects of rulership. He would have had no problem doing that at age 12. So the Savior set this example. He was early about his Father's business. He did not leave it until his older years. But even as early as 12, he had developed so far in this line that he was able to teach men of wisdom and doctors of knowledge in the temple. And then, so I'm going to go back there. Okay, so let me put, I'm afraid that quote wasn't on the screen. Sorry about that. But what are some examples of young men and women who, like Nat, like the Savior, started out young and devoted themselves to what they were supposed to do from a very young age?
Samuel and Hannah started in the temple.
Very good. Samuel, very good one. Joseph Smith, Daniel, right?
Would the Strictly Warriors count?
Definitely. Yeah, Kylie, we're just wrapping up here, so you can feel free to go if you need to. We're just wrapping up here. David, good. For Columbus,
Elijah.
Good. Elijah.
Elisha.
Good. A couple other examples are, one of my personal favorites is Mormon, because when he was 15 years old, the Savior came to him. And when he was 16 years old, he was put over the entire Nephite armies. And the Nephite armies were bigger than a lot of times we think. It was the last Nephite battle was bigger than the main armies that battles we think of today, like D-Day and all of the huge war struggles. It was bigger than that. So Mormon was over that at 16. You have William Bradford. He was 12 when he started joining the separatist movement. You have Brigham Young, John Taylor. So we're just going to close here and with the rest of this quote by Joseph F. Smith. He says, Brigham Young, and if I could get a volunteer for a closing prayer just while we're reading this quote, then we'll have that and then we'll let y'all go. But President Smith said, Brigham Young was but a youth when he determined to devote his life to the church. John Taylor, Wilford Woodruff, and in fact, all the early founders of the church devoted their youth and their manhood to the cause of Zion. You may look around today, and who are the leaders among the people but those who early and zealously devoted themselves to the faith? And you may foretell. So as you're looking around at your own life and thinking, do I follow this counsel from President Smith? Am I like Nat? Am I like Brigham Young, like Samuel? And if I'm not, how can I become like them? Because President Smith says you can foretell who are to be the leaders by observing the boys who show self-respect and purity and who are earnest in all good works. That's where the Lord pulls out his leaders from. And so just as we're going, the assignment for reading next week is chapters 6 through 10. And hopefully we'll get the lesson online very shortly in the next few days. And there are some assignments you can get on the Family School Online, and they're all there. And I just wanted to close with this thought. As you're going through this chapter, really try to pull out those character traits. It's easy to look at Nat and go, wow, he's so amazing. He's incredible. I wish I could be like him. Too bad I'm not. But think, how can I become like him? Because you can. And we have examples of many men and women throughout history who have. And they're the ones who changed the world. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this class. It is a joy to teach y'all. So I'm going to, let's see, who will be able to say the prayer? Okay, Andrew, housekeeper. You able to? Thank you for volunteering for our closing prayer here.
You hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank that I can learn about literature, and please let us all get all our homework done. Say things in Jesus Christ's name.
Amen. Well,
Bye.
okay, bye for all of us who need to go. If you have any questions, a couple of you have emailed me with questions on getting on Canvas and which are the right assignments to submit and all that, and I'm still nailing all of that down, so I will respond to those. And for those who can't get on Canvas, I'm going to put my email up here on the screen. That is my personal Gmail email. So if you can't get on Canvas or you're trying to contact someone at the school and it's just not working, that's my personal email you can use to, oh, sorry, Haley. Here, let me.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
Are you going to be teaching history too?
Yes.
Wait, you're awesome.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Hello?
Yes, does someone
Yeah.
else have a question?
Oh, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I tried getting on Canvas, and I cannot submit assignments. Like, it won't let me.
Okay. Do you mind shooting me an email, and then I'll be able to look up your account and see what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Hello? So I am brand new to this, and this is my first year. And what exactly is Campus?
Okay, so Canvas is the program that the school uses for submitting assignments and quizzes and everything like that. Check with your mom or your dad if you don't know how to log in. They might have the login information. And if you are having trouble, try contacting the school through the different support messages and different people they have there. If you're still having trouble, go ahead and shoot me an email and we'll get it worked out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.